I'm told that 130 heads of state and government have confirmed their presence at the summit. This reflects the political importance of the summit, the engagement and commitment of leaders of the world to really looking or reimagining a UN 2.0 and committing to the reforms that are needed. I think the Summit of the Future is the outcome of a long process and the collective political will of seeing the UN strengthen its power, its delivery capacity, adapt itself to the challenges of the 21st century. And I think that some say that it's one in a lifetime opportunity to agree, discuss, and commit to build a better UN. I think that the UN has done a lot of good to the world, prevented many conflicts, provided a life-saving support to refugees, to victims of war, in an endless list of the good things that the UN has done. But I think that we are living a different reality than 80 years ago, practically, in that there is the time has come for a UN refurbishing, retooling, rejuvenating, and the opportunity is now. We are confident that we will have a strong pact of the future that will put women and gender equality at the center, and that looks at the UN as this very complex ecosystem that is human-made, and therefore, you know, the improvements and the reforms have also need to be also led by humans, by societies, not only by governments, but societies as a whole. And that's why the voices of young people, of social movements, academic scientists, has been so active and strong. And we have to say that member states also have provided, you know, a central space to the negotiations and the discussions of the pact, of the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration of Future Generations, which is a single package. And we are very much looking forward to seeing, you know, the Summit of the Future commit not only to the pact, but to the implementation of the actions that are embedded in the pact.
Ma'am, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he's also scheduled to address the Summit of the Future. When it comes to India's role in such an important forum, how significant do you see that as?
Oh, of course. I'm told that 130 heads of state and government have confirmed their presence at the summit. I think that this reflects the political importance of the summit, the engagement and commitment of leaders of the world to really looking or reimagining a UN 2.0 and committing to the reforms that are needed. And it's not only the Security Council, it's, you know, the peace and security architecture, the new agenda for peace, it's the revitalization of the epicenter of the system, the General Assembly, you know, thinking about the space and the role of the environmental agenda and climate change, which was absent from the original UN Charter. It is looking at how to improve the international financial architecture to respond to the needs of the developing nations today.
Ma'am, you have also served as the President of the United Nations General Assembly, and you know India has been pushing for security reforms, and it has also been pitching for a permanent seat at UNSC. How important do you think that India should be there when it comes to having a permanent seat in the table?
Well, the reform of the Security Council has been a process that is ongoing for more than 20 years. Now, the Pact of the Future includes a call and an action to reform the Security Council, and I think that there is general agreement that the Security Council should reflect the world of today, should reflect the current geopolitical landscape, and should include the voices of different regions and countries that were absent in the first design.
How important is climate an agenda when it comes to the Summit of the Future? And, India has promised to cut its emission by net zero by 2070. And, Prime Minister Modi also launched the Lifestyle for Environment initiative recently. What will you say on that?
Well, it's extremely important that countries of the size of India, bring forward these very, very strong commitments. We are not doing well on the climate front. Commitments of, 1.8 billion people living in India, I think is really going to make the difference. We have seen the commitment to renewable energy in India and the commitment to reduce emissions. We hope to see the same among other big powers. It's extremely important that the emissions stop increasing and we can meet the Paris Agreement commitments of net zero by 2050 and reducing by half the emissions by 2030, is it?
Or India 2070.
Yeah, well, but I'm speaking about the language of the Paris Agreement, no? So, and the other issue that is critical is adaptation, climate finance for adaptation and resilience building, and bringing some financial means to the country, especially those that are the most vulnerable to climate impacts, and that includes small island developing states and other developing economies. So means of implementation are absolutely critical, not only the financial resources, but also the low carbon technologies and the capacity, the installed capacity. This is a collective effort. Every country, every society has its part to curb climate change.
Ma'am, you are one of the very few leaders who, when it comes to women empowerment, you are one of the very few leaders who has been at the helm, when it comes to leading as the President of the General Assembly. India also recently passed a reservation bill where it, reserved 2/3 of the seats for women. What will you say on that, and how significant is that?
Well, I think it's very important. I am a strong believer on quotas because, of course, we should not have quotas forever, but we need quotas to close the inequality gaps in all spaces, in parliaments, in governments, in the international system. GWL Voices precisely works on that, monitors and support the idea that we need to have gender parity in positions of power of the international system. That's why we're advocating for more women as presidents of the General Assembly. In almost 80 years, I'm only the fourth woman. In almost 80 years of history of the General Assembly, the first ever female president of the General Assembly was an incredible Indian woman, Vijaya Lakshmi Pandit, as you know, and then two other incredible women, Madame Brooks from Liberia, Sheikha Haya from Bahrain, and I'm very proud to say I'm the first woman from Latin America to have this responsibility. So we are asking for more women presidents of the General Assembly, and of course the first ever female Secretary General for the UN.
Ma'am, last question. This is the time when we are seeing two ongoing conflicts. It's Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, Gaza. How much do you think this would feature during the United Nations General Assembly session? And also, India has been calling for dialogue and diplomacy when it comes to these two conflicts. What will you say on that?
Well, I think that's the role of the UN. The UN should be the home of preventive diplomacy, of dialogue and international cooperation. That is the DNA of the United Nations. So I think that the high-level week of the General Assembly during the Summit of the Future, it is time for us and for leaders to discuss how we end war and we combat all forms of violence. Of course, these include the war in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, but it also includes the almost 100 conflicts that are happening as we speak in different parts of the world that are as important. If we look at Yemen, if we look to many of the, unfortunately, African countries, sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, there are many conflicts out there, Haiti in my own region. So the attention of the UN, the convening power of the UN, the preventive diplomacy power of the UN should be put at the service of crafting a more peaceful world.